Okay, morning everybody. Yes, as I'm from BHIB Insurance Brokers. I'm not a salesman, so I'm not going to try and sell you anything. I've never sold an insurance policy in my life. I just get involved in health and safety, risk management. Some of the companies I've worked for, I've been the insurance and risk manager for University of Warwick, Argos, Leicester City Council for 13 years. So nice to see some Leicestershire names up on there attending this. And where else we've been? Rolls-Royce, and also a liability loss adjuster. So I've been around a bit. Obviously, we had a lot of issues at Leicester City Council with regards to data breaches. If you go to the next slide, please, John. And what the reason why we're doing this, and these figures, every time I do this presentation, I have to research the figures and update them because they go up a lot more. And you can see fraud and cybercrime is now the country's most common offences. And you only need to turn the television on during the day, and there will be some programme about people scamming somebody. I think BBC has one every day, and it is a major topic. And if you are as old as I am, I come from an era where there was no computers. So there was no cybercrime as such. There was always fraud. But as it's developed and more people become more reliable on their laptops and their phones for access to systems, there's more opportunities for the fraudster out there to gain access to your personal details, your work details. It currently costs the UK economy in excess of 27 billion per year. I checked that figure this morning, still correct, but I think each time I do this, it will be going up 5-10 billion each time, because from someone from a computer expert area, this is very easy for them to do. They don't have to get a crowbar and break into someone's property and maybe get away with nothing, or a computer or something. This is very simple for someone who's trained in IT. To do this kind of crime. One of the surprising statistics that next comes up there is that an individual business is now 50 times more likely to be a victim of fraud via their computer than a physical crime. So if you think about the systems you have in place to protect your workplace, intruder alarms, fire alarms, beams, all that kind of thing, you're protecting that. What have you got in place for your work computer system? So it's a lot more likely to happen by computer fraud than you being broken into. So what are you doing about protecting your systems? Government figures show that over 50% of businesses are unprepared. I think it's a lot more than that, and I couldn't really see where the government got that figure from. I think they just asked people, are you prepared? And people have said, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. So certainly looking at our clients, I know a lot of them are not prepared, particularly when they've had a cyber crime against them. It's complete shock. They thought, why have we been chosen? But so many companies are attacked every day. I spoke to our IT people when I did this, before I did this presentation, and they say they get attacks every day. There are individuals or whoever from around the world trying to gain access to their system. And we're just an insurance broker, so I don't know what they're aiming to get at by getting into our system. But any business is a potential target. So I think it's one of them situations where if a fraudster throws enough mud at all the targets, some of it will stick, which is why you get these fraud emails nearly every day, because there are people who take it seriously, who do think it is the bank contacting them and start responding to it. And it only needs them to do 1 or 2 people a day to do that for them to make a considerable amount of money. So if I go to the next slide, please. I'm going to go through some of the attacks that you can get. Look, I don't really want to frighten you too much. You just need to be aware that these things happen in case you're confronted with this kind of thing coming up on your screen. Now, this is what majority of NHS trusts received probably 5 or 6 years ago. It was ransomware, and their system was completely locked. They could not gain access. Now, you can imagine all people trying to make appointments, operations going ahead, medical records, all that kind of thing. Various trusts could not get into the system. They were faced with that page. And they received a request for a ransom payment, which is why it's called ransomware. And they were told, if you pay this amount, you'll get immediate access to your systems. Some did, some didn't. What it does, it encrypts your files. You cannot get into anything. No matter what you do, you can turn it off, turn it on again. It won't make any difference. Your system is locked. And they give you a nice little padlock there to show you that it is locked. One of the things here is, though, if you pay the ransom, you may not get your files back. There's no guarantee. So our advice is normally don't pay the ransom and report it to Action Fraud on that number there. Or if you do have a cyber policy, then there'll be instructions on there what to do, because there will be someone there who will be able to try and get your files back without having to pay the ransom. One of the problems with paying a ransom is that you then go on a list of people who have fallen for this kind of thing, and you're going to get targeted a lot more. So that's why, even though it may be extremely urgent you get your files back and the amount they're requesting is something you can afford, they normally go reasonably small amounts, which is why a lot of the NHS Trust paid it because they have a lot of cash. But as I said, if you pay the amount, you then go on to a stucker list as such of people who've fallen for this in the past and are likely to fall for it again. So please don't pay the ransom and report it to Action Fraud or your insurers. The chap earlier on from I think it was Melton Mowbray area said about policy, and I will talk about some policies at the end, but rather on a general basis, because I'm not here to try and sell you anything. Phishing or spear phishing, as mentioned earlier by John, is by the way, on that poll, I didn't get that right. There was some there I've never heard of, and I think there's more and more being invented all the time. So I didn't get that answer right. But this is one that was mentioned: phishing or spear phishing. There is a difference in that phishing is a lot more random. They send out tens of thousands of emails every day, and hope that one or two people will click onto their links and then they can gain access into your system. Phishing emails are not directly targeted at an individual, but spear phishing is. This is when they've done a bit of research. Nowadays, you've all may have websites. It will say on there who the finance director is or who's in charge of finance. And I'm talking here mainly about SMEs rather than councils. But if you think of any business, they're all on the internet. They will have the company CEO on there, the finance director, that kind of thing. So they do a bit of research and they then bang off an email to try and get some information from you or access to your system. And we see this quite a lot. We all have systems that sort of junk these kind of emails, but some do get through. And one of, I think it was of a Lincoln Council, who sent an email to all their staff from an outside agency and with an attachment, and wanted to find out how many people would open the attachment, even though there was no clue in the email as to what it related to. And it was something like 50 or 60% of their employees opened the link, not knowing what it was. So the particular council then put everybody on training for this type of thing, so they could see what kind of damage it could do to the company. 6 months after the training, they then sent another email out exactly the same, and it was something like 15 or 16% of people opened it again. So a lot of people learned their lesson, but there was still a large amount of people who were falling for it. I think they got took in for more training, but it only needs one person to fall for this for the hackers, the fraudsters, to get into your system. So we'll go on to the next slide, please, John. There will be ample time at the end for questions, by the way. CEO fraud. Now, this again, if they send out this kind of email to 50, 100 companies a day and one succeeds, then they're well in the money. And it will be something like they will target someone who's responsible for the finances and ask them to move money quickly. It's an emergency, that kind of thing. And then there's some examples there of kind of things, and they say it's urgent so that you don't have time to consult anybody or check or anything. You're told it's urgent and you do it because it's the CEO. I went to a seminar run by AIG, one of the world's biggest insurers, and they gave a lifetime example from one of their clients where the finance director received an email purporting to be from the CEO, which says, we're in the middle of a hostile takeover, and what I need you to do is put some funds to one side, put it in this account, so that I've got some money to fight this takeover. And it was so realistic. The finance director put in about £500,000 into this account. Then over a period of days, there was a request for more money to be put into this account. And when there was then a board meeting, the finance director sidled up to the CEO and said, are you going to announce this takeover or this attempt at a takeover of the company at this meeting? And you can guess what the CEO said. What takeover? What are you talking about? That fraudster got away with £50 million from a financial institution in London. And they were insured, but up to £10 million. So they lost £40 million from their bottom line. Now, I don't know what type of finance company, they couldn't go into that kind of detail, but you can see the amounts of money they're talking about. That fraudster probably doesn't need to do any more frauds. He's set for life now. It is very difficult to get your money back. Sometimes banks do say, fair enough, and they give you back. There's no guarantee in that. They are getting more careful with who they give the money back to. And what you need to do really is verify and check. Even though some of these email statements say it's very urgent, don't call me, that kind of thing, you must do that. I've seen situations involving our own clients and between ourselves where we're about to send some money to one of our clients, maybe a claims payment, and we've received an email purporting to be from that company saying we've changed our bank details, the new details are below. And sometimes we didn't fall for it, but people do. They say, well, they think, well, people change their bank details all the time. That seems perfectly reasonable. It's got the letter heading from the company, and they do it. What you must do in situations like that, if any of your suppliers or whatever change their bank details, ring them up and speak to somebody at that company and say, I've had this email, I'm just checking it's correct. Simple phone call like that will stop you spending money to fraudsters who've done that email kind of fraud to you. So that is very prevalent, and we've seen insurance claims for that. Next, oh, sorry, you're there already. Other threats, DDoS is on the list that John gave you. It's a denial of service. You can't get into your service. They're very similar to ransomware. Rogue employees. You have an employee, maybe he's left under unfavorable terms, but he's still got access to your IT system. It may be from IT, but the amount of damage they can do, they can delete all your records, they can sell your records on the dark web. There's any number of things that they could do. How you counteract that is make sure that all passwords and systems are changed if an employee leaves. You should be doing this regularly anyway, password changing. But it's very important if someone leaves, particularly under bad terms, that you change all your details in case they've still got access to it. More likely is your negligent employees. I mentioned about Lincoln and people opening emails. We did it at our place, and I think it was 3% across the company that opened an email which was clearly not clear fraud, but clearly not related to their work, and they opened that email. And then there's the telephone scams. How many of you had phone calls from call centers? Because you can normally hear all the chatter in the background. The one I've got at the moment, they keep ringing me, is saying that they will invest my money for me in whatever, and they will guarantee 10% return per annum, which is, is impossible to guarantee anything like that. But the fact that there's a click before the phone starts, and then it's someone who's clearly in the call center, triggers enough the fact that I'm not going to invest my many millions that I haven't got into these into these scams, but we all get them every day. Examples of council claims, okay, not so much cyber crime, but relating to data as such, where we've had claims or I've had personal involvement in these. We had a social worker that left highly confidential papers on the roof of the car and drove off. All those details contain vulnerable people's names and addresses and all that kind of thing. Those paperworks were never found. Obviously, they went back to the car park space where they were, and they'd gone. But nothing's ever been heard on that again. But there's always that ticking time bomb. You've lost that data. You have to report it. You probably have to tell the individuals involved. There's bad PR, and there could actually be harm to people if it got into the wrong hands. We had a case at Leicester where the names of adoption parents were accidentally sent to the birth father. So this isn't anyone committing a fraud or any sort of crime. It's a mistake by an employee in sending the details to a birth father who was of a violent nature, and meant that the council had to spend £30,000 on moving the adoption parents to safeguard them and the child. Again, this is about safeguarding data. So you can imagine if someone got into your system, they could get all this information, but these were where they've been accidentally given out by negligent employees. We think this was the third one here was caused by cleaners, in that a lot of paperwork was found in a skip next to a pub, where it was basically HR information. So it had names, bank details, addresses, date of births, all the kind of things that fraudsters would love to have, and would give quite a bit of money to get hold of, were found in a skip, luckily by a well-meaning member of the public who notified, of course, Leicester Mercury first, but then did give us all the stuff back. So that made the headlines and wasn't very good from a PR point of view, as far as we're concerned. And January 2018, again, this was a council that we insured. They gave all the details of vulnerable people sent to all the taxi companies in a tender exercise. So they gave lists of people's names, what their medical needs were, to this taxi companies, who could then provide a quote providing the service that they normally provide. But it contained a lot of personal information which should not have been supplied to various companies who wanted to tender on this thing. So these are claims. So the first one didn't result in an insurance claim, but did result in having to be notified to the ICO. If I go to the next page, if you go, the ICO is a good website, ico.uk or .org, I think it is, where there's a lot of information with regards to data protection. And these are, they always publish the fines that they give out to councils. And here's an example of just a few recent ones. You can see the amounts are quite steep and normally are not recoverable from insurers. They're meant to be there to penalise the councils, so they're there and are not normally recoverable from insurers. You can insure for it, but none of these were insured for these fines. So vulnerable people's details left online for 5 years, and it obviously no one looked at that website too much, but someone did, and then reported it to the council, and the council then had to disclose it to the ICO. £70,000 fine for London Borough of Islington for failing to keep 89,000 people's information from a parking ticking system. Again, it was easy to access their site to get this information. And the last one there involved Gloucester City Council, who were fined 100,000 after a cyber attacker accessed council employees' sensitive personal information. Now, on top of these fines, under GDPR, the next slide that you can see here, you must report any data losses that you've incurred within 72 hours to the ICO, and then they will decide what further action is necessary from them. But they do have the power to fine up to 4% of a worldwide turnover, or 20 million euros, about 18 million quid nowadays, I think, whichever is higher. So substantial fines, and they do not lower them because you're a council and thinking, well, it's public money, they will still impose these fines. And for the last slide, you can see the big figures that they've imposed there. More recently, there's been more rights for data subjects, including erasure and objections to profiling. And there's also compensation for non-material damage. So when these incidents started occurring and data was personal data was given out incorrectly, you could only make a claim against that company if you'd suffered materially. So if money had been taken out of your account, or you'd incurred costs in safeguarding your information. That's changed now with the latest GDPR change, in that compensation is claimable just for the distress of knowing your information is out there. So that everyone can say, well, I'm distressed. You don't have to prove it to a medical nature. You could say, well, I'm sorry, I've been distressed. I got a letter a week or two ago from my pension company saying that all data was given out, and to safeguard your pension, you should do this, that, and the other. I would imagine some of the people who received that letter would say, thank you for that. Now, what are you going to pay me for the distress that this has caused, this data breach? I think it involved a third-party data management company who had the breach. So now you're more likely to get a claim if you let someone's data go out there, personal data. So how can you protect your business? Well, attending things like this, use education, making people aware, have a risk management regime in place, so that you have some sort of policy of what you're going to do. That could be things like changing your password. It's so annoying when I get the email from IT saying you've got to change your password again. But I do realize that the longer you keep the same password, the more likely you're going to get a successful attack upon you. How secure is your network? Now, obviously, I rely on our IT team to put in measures in place. So what have you got in place from your IT, whether you outsource it to another company or whatever? Managing user privileges, only let those people access to certain parts of your site that need access. So don't give a complete wide access to everybody. There are various levels you can give to certain people. Malware protection, we're probably aware of. We've probably got that on your personal computer. Make sure your business one's got that. Monitoring, removal of media controls, home and mobile working policy. Have a policy in place. This is to either you put blocks on council computers to stop people accessing sites that are not going to be necessary for their work. Vet third-party suppliers, IT suppliers. What do they do, to protect their own sites? What insurance do they have in case your IT supplier makes a mistake and someone gains access to your site through no fault of your own? Make sure, the same as you would any other contractor, that they've got professional indemnity insurance to cover you in case there's a problem. I've put consider insurance there. Mentioned earlier on, we do sell a policy, so do all our competitors, and I think it is a bit expensive, but you can share it with 3 or 4 other councils. If you've got other councils who want to join you in that policy, then you can. You don't have to be clients of ours either. You can just purchase this policy, but make sure you've got additional insurance over and above the standard that you may have under your core policy at the moment. What the policy gives you, next slide, John, and I'm nearly finished, where it gives access to industry experts, because I know if I suddenly had ransomware on my computer, I would not know where to go. So that gives you a number to contact and say, my computer's been breached. Can you help me get out of it? This is all part of the insurance policies that are out there. It covers you legal expenses for data breach, reputational loss if you try and get your reputation back. So there are awards amounts given for that. Forensic costs, sometimes it takes an IT expert to delve deep into your computer to make sure there's no lingering person on there or whatever, but that takes an IT person to do that, which is quite a lot. Repair costs, if your actual systems are damaged, extortion, loss of business income and increased costs. So if you were a business and you lost trade because of not having access to your system, you can insure for that. Data breach fines and penalties, but only under certain circumstances, like if you've been completely stupid. I think insurers will have that reasonable clause in there somewhere, small print. Credit identity theft monitoring expenses. So going forward, there would be a system running in the background of your own computer system, which monitors anyone trying to gain access. I said we have that as a matter of course, and I'm amazed the amount of times that someone is trying to get into our system. Final slide. I think I'm doing right. John. Claims for direct financial loss, privacy claims for breach of personal identifiable information. So as I mentioned, people can claim now for distress caused by you losing their data. So who is going to pay these claims? And if you could be talking about thousands of people, hopefully a majority of them won't claim, but some will. They won't get a lot of money, but multiply that by a few hundred, it can be a substantial amount. Corruption of third-party data by malicious code. So someone gets into your system and then gets through to someone else's system and causes damage there. Defamation, libel and slander. A lot about that in the news at the moment, but if someone gained access to your system and started sending emails out purporting to be from your company, someone may sue you for that. And obviously the distress claims, which I've mentioned, which we do see. I've got one at the moment where a leisure centre sent out an email to all their members, but it was quite clear on there who all the individual members were by their names, and someone took insult to that and said, now everyone knows that I go to this gym and I don't feel so safe and I'm going to claim for distress. So I'm sorry I rattled through that, but there was quite a lot I wanted to get through. And John asked me to leave some time for some questions, but I think he wanted to say something first. So over to you, John.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Brian. Yes, I'm just going to some people may not be aware of I'm just going to share a couple of features in Scribe that protect you and improve your risk related to cyber security. I mean, a big thing is moving from the desktop to the cloud, because if you're on your desktop, you're responsible for a lot of your security protection, so for instance, like the physical security, we talked about that ransomware attack on the NHS and that it has access to all your files. Well, if you are working in the cloud, those files, important files, won't exist on your laptop. So they won't be able to encrypt them. There will be no files to encrypt. And if they did manage to, someone did, like the Evil Maid attack, did have the ability to access the laptop, and you might already be logged into a particular cloud app, at least administrators can remove your login remotely. So that would be removed from it. So you're able to remotely control it. And then with cloud, you get all the other, benefits from it. You don't need to, if it's on your own desktop, you don't need to worry about data backup and recovery because generally cloud applications already support that. Apps get upgraded automatically in your browser, so you're always on the latest version, so you don't have to worry about patching or upgrading your desktop software because that's already taken care of for you. I mean, malware and virus threats are still something that you need to take care of, but again, they're less impactful in the cloud because the applications are running in browsers such as Chrome or Edge, and those browsers are constantly updated to keep ahead of all the latest security threats. So then you have a less dependency on your local hardware, which is less dependency on your IT team and yourself keeping your hardware up to date. And then a big thing also is with desktop software, which Brian alluded to, is the ability to, you don't really have the ability to have fine-grained access control. So like I just show a couple of features on Scribe. I've just logged in there. I mean, on the fine-grained access control, you can go into the users, and then you can here's a bunch of users. We have a few administrators read only, but yeah, you can add a user to the system, and then you can confirm their role. What are they allowed to do? Billing, invoicing, or whatever. So that user only has access to those systems. Then you get audit trail, which you wouldn't get normally. So like if I go onto a payment here, it's all fictitious data, this particular payment, and you can go into the change history and see what users changed what data. So not only do you have the security of that particular data, but you can also look at the changes made to it by Nathan and Jane here. And also from like a GDPR point of view, and freedom of information request, and having all your data in one area, you've got the kind of CRM part of Scribe. If I log in here, I'll click on a user there. Here, this is myself. So here I've got full information of all records associated with the user. So any kind of tenancy agreements, receipts, invoices, bookings from different applications, and then the high level details, personal information on the user, and any apps that they're signed up to, and any attached files, notes. Again, you get the change history, etc. So with that, audit trails and centralized information, like if you had a GDPR right to be forgotten request or freedom of information request, it's all there. It's not in inboxes, it's not on file systems, it's all in one place and you don't have to worry. Anyway, so that's a little bit about all the features. A lot of people don't realize kind of those features, which we don't really talk about too much in terms of Scribe applications. Anyway, so we do have some questions.